Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to listen to me. I'm going to present a open source tool that my little company has made, Punk Security, called SMBeagle. And I'm going to talk you through what it is, how it works, and hopefully give you a live demo. So, hang on a second. Let's see if this clicker's working. No, it's not. Brilliant. All right, there we go. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover off what was the problem that we identified, what our approach was, how does SMBeagle work, give you a little demo, and then show you what we're thinking of doing in the future with it as well. Because we built this to be a community tool, and we've already had some feedback from the community already. So anything that you see that you don't like or you think could be enhanced, let us know, and we'll add it to our backlog and get it fixed. So, who am I? My name's Daniel Oates-Lee. I'm a co-founder at Punk Security. I've been in IT for over 25 years, specializing in cybersecurity for the last 15. I put Terraformer down there because I work in the DevOps and the DevSecOps space. So I like automating as much as possible with like cybersecurity. So I'm a very big believer in Terraform. I love writing stuff in Terraform and Ansible and automating systems. So that's the reason why I put that down. The other co-director is Simon Gurney. He's probably one of the master brains behind SMBeagle, which is why I put his slide up today. He can't be with us today, but he is an absolute geek. And if you want to reach out to either of us afterwards and give us your feedback about what you think about SMBeagle, then that would be awesome. Thanks. So what was the problem that we identified? Well, during the pandemic, we had a lot of clients that were hit with ransomware attacks. And we were trying to identify, well, why are people getting hit with ransomware when we've got so much protection out there already? So we started writing a list of things, which I'm pretty sure everybody will be quite familiar with. So one of the main reasons that we found that people were getting hit with ransomware is because of undocumented IT services and technical debt. So network file shares that they weren't aware of, or shadow IT systems that have been stood up. Their backup systems, they were either failing because nobody had tested that the restores were working. They got poor network segmentation, so when they were getting hit with ransomware, it was propagating across the networks. Phishing attacks were also a primary reason. And endpoint security on either the servers or the users' devices was extremely poor. There were a couple of instances where we'd seen ransomware running in front of some very large AV vendors. And when we went to go and test their configuration, we actually managed to run Metasploit in front of Trend Micro because they tuned it down that much. They'd effectively made it useless. So what was our approach? Well, we had a quick think about this and we thought, well, we can definitely help out with undocumented IT systems, because what we thought was we'd build a system to help IT companies understand where their SMB services were, where the files are being stored, what permissions do users have. So that would help with IT services and technical debt. It would also help identify with their poor backup facilities, because we're going to be identifying where the company's data is, how it's being stored, who's accessing it, and give the ability for the IT teams to be able to test actually restoring some of this stuff. We ruled out the next two because, let's be fair, SMB scanning is not going to help with either of those. But it would help identify if users were overly permissive. Now, I'm going to cover off, because this isn't just a blue team tool any longer. It's now also a red team's tool. And I'll cover that off in a minute, and the reason why I say it's going to be a red teamers tool. We also were looking at how it would be able to affect some of like the server configurations. And if we were identifying open file shares that were using like the Everyone group, or the NTFS permissions weren't set correctly, and they weren't thinking about these kind of things, it was going to help enhance being able to reduce that ability for ransomware to just run riot across the company's networks. So I'm going to quickly cover off why I think this is also a red teamers tool. Because not only for the blue team, yes, it's identifying where your SMB shares are, but for the red teams, and they've used this extensively, I've got a member in the crowd already who's used it on a red team exercise. It gives the red team the ability to find those IT shares and be able to quickly see where like PowerShell scripts are, where the ini files are, if there's any hidden IT shares that we can go and drop a piece of malicious software into, or how many IT people put passwords in configuration files. So we'll quickly be able to identify how where those are. So how does SMBeagle work? So it's important to state this at the beginning. SMBeagle is run by a low privileged user on an endpoint. There is no admin permissions. There is no elevation. We've also put a lot of effort into making sure that all of our SMBeagle has also been digitally signed, because we don't want a security tool being run on an endpoint that's triggering things like Microsoft Smart Screen. So when you download it and you run it, it's digitally signed and it's all been authenticated. And we've got a proper pipeline so you can go in and have a look and see what it looks like. But it runs as a low privilege user on their endpoint. So you pick a user out in the company, you run SMBeagle on their machine. In this instance, I've got it running on a client connected on a VPN, but it could also be on the LAN. And what it'll do is first of all, it will have a look at the current network connections that user's currently using. So where the domain controllers are, if they're connected to an application server, what other subnets are they connected to, those kind of information. It'll also have a look at the local interfaces and see if you're on a VPN, if you're attached to two networks at the same time. And it will start generating this list of subnets that it can go off and scan. You can also we need to change this slide because we don't use that whitelist and blacklist anymore. So we'll change that to allow and blacklist for the next presentation. So you can also specify networks that you want to include and what networks that you don't want to include. And what that'll do is it'll give SMBeagle all the subnets to go off and have a little look at. What it'll then do is it'll test connectivity to each of those IP addresses inside those network subnets, and it will specifically look on Microsoft DS or TCP port 445 for any open SMB shares. If it finds it, it will then add that IP address to a list of IPs to actually go and scan for SMB shares once it's finished scanning everything. So it's almost like it's doing a very quick nmap of those network ranges that you've just identified. It will then connect to every single one of those IP addresses, and it will take a look and have a look and see if there's any SMB shares on there. It will pull back hidden shares and open shares as well. It will then connect as that user to those shares. Hang on a second. It will then connect to every single one of those shares as that low privileged user, and it will scan it will then record all the files and folders. It will record whether the user can read, write, or delete, and it will pull back things like creation and last modified time as well. Now, it's important, that information, because we're going to use that for some of the red teaming stuff later on. It will then do that for every single SMB share that it can find, and it will then output that either directly into Elastic, and we built a nice Kibana dashboard to be able to visualize that, or it'll dump it into a CSV file so then you can go pivoting around it. Now, that's quite handy for the blue team to understand if you're a user that's sat in finance, why are you able to access something in HR? But it's also really helpful for like a red team who's run it as a low privilege user to find those hidden IT file shares, and then to go and look directly at like the installs, the VBS scripts, the ini files, the PS1 files, any Python files, Terraform scripts, stuff like that. So we've also got SMBeagle running on both Windows. It's also been ported onto Linux, so you can run it from Kali Linux if you really wanted to. We've also put it onto an ARM platform as well, so you can run this on a Raspberry Pi or any kind of ARM system that you want. And we've also ported it into a Docker image, so if you didn't want to have the executable on your actual machine or somewhere else, then you could just pull it down as a Docker image and just run it natively. So hopefully, I'm going to run a little demo now. This demo has been built up in Azure. We're going to connect in using this Windows 11 box here. And we're going to see that there's a domain controller here inside this auth subnet. I think these subnets are actually been reversed. But we're going to see that there's a domain controller there. It's running some corporate file shares. And then we're going to connect to this Linux server over here, which is running a WordPress site. And hopefully we're going to find the hidden IT share. So, demo time. So we've connected in as a low privilege user. This user is Bob Smith. And if we have a quick look, we can see that he's got the usual things that you would have inside a normal corporate network. You've got a profile, user's profile area. You've got a couple of IT shares, different department directories. And we're connected to the WordPress site. If we go and have a quick look in the command line, we should see that we're not connected to any other kind of network connections or anything like that. So we'll just go into downloads. SMBeagle can be downloaded from GitHub in a zip format. And when you extract it, you get it into SMBeagle and then the relevant path. SMBeagle. And I'm just going to run through some of these switches. So obviously, we've got the top little ASCII art there for ourselves. As you come down, you've got a couple of easy, quick examples here of how to use the Beagle. So you've got the first one here, which is showing how to be able to output the format in a CSV file. Then you quickly output it in Elastic. You can also do it in Elastic and CSV if you really wanted to. We'll probably do that today. And it's got some other ones as well. So we've built quite a bit of functionality into this, and we've got some more enhancements on its way. So the most important ones in my view is -C and -E, which is the CSV and the Elastic, but also the -L, because if you don't run that, it'll run an enumeration against itself, against the machine that you're actually on, to see if you've got any network file shares. You may well want to do that, because which user doesn't create network file shares to share their music with their friends on in the same departments? I don't know many that would do that, but we've also got this -E here. So if you want to exclude hidden files network shares like $, admin $, $, those kind of things, you might not want to enumerate all of those hidden file shares, especially if you're running it as like a low privileged user. There's no need. You might want to do that as a privileged user. Then you've also got -D, -U, and -P, which is for the domain credentials. That's primarily for the Linux user. SMBeagle was written in .core, so we can port it between any of the different platforms, which is the reason why we've got it running across multiple different platforms. So if we just, if I just clear that screen. And we'll just have a quick look at how SMBeagle working. So I'm just going to create a quick output.csv. We'll also port this at the corporate Elastic stack as well, which is running on app 1. We're going to exclude the local shares, and we're also going to exclude the hidden network shares, because I want to run this. Yes. Yeah, by all means. Sorry, my apologies. Font. Is that better? Yeah, a bit more? No, that's fine. Oh, I think that's gone a little bit too big, hasn't it? Is that perfect, actually? All right, fair enough. I'll leave it at that then. No problem. So we'll get this to run, and then we'll go back through. What we'll do is we'll start There you go. It's now completed running the network scans. But if we have a quick look at this, it's outputting the information initially of all of the different subnets that it can actually see, and also some private IP address information. It's then gone through and it's discovered these are the network ranges that we want to scan. So if we have a look up here, we can see here it's going to scan these /24 networks. It's then done a network probe, and it's found that 2 hosts on these networks have actually got SMB running on it, and these are the two here. So that 172.1.4 here, that's the domain controller, and this 0.4 we weren't currently connected to that one, so we'll take a quick look at it. It's then identified all of the SMB shares that are currently running on there. So underneath 0.4, we can see we've got a software share and we've got a Terraform share. So that might be quite interesting for the red teams to go and have a look at. And why a user, and for blue team, why a user's got access to that, a normal standard user. We can also see running on the domain controller, we can see sysvol, netvol, we can see the departments, company's file share and the user's file share area. SMB's then gone through and enumerated all of those files, and then outputted the information for us. And I've had a few people from the community telling me that they've run this on quite large networks, and they've left it running for like 3 or 4 days, and there hasn't been any issues. So if you think, oh well, I can't, my company's network's too big, I'm not going to be able to run this. Yeah, you will absolutely be able to run it. Just leave it running for a couple of days. So if we have a quick look inside in the CSV file to start with, it's not going to, for the people in the back, I do apologize, I'll just get this zoomed in a little bit. So what it's doing, first of all, is it's grabbing the name of the file, then the host that it's identified that file on, the file extension, the user that was able to access it, the host name that it was accessed from, the UNC, creation time, last time, read, write, delete, directory base, directory type, and then the base itself. And the reason that we put this with username and the host name in there is so then you can run this as multiple different users from different points of the network to see whether there's anything new that can be found. I mean, this is it's really useful, the CSV, but where it comes into its own is when we get it into Elastic. So if we just change that to anywhere in the last year, we can see that we've got the same information here as we did. It's not very easy to read. See if I can try and collapse that. Yep. Brilliant. Anybody know how to use Elastic? If we only had Elastic in today. So we can see a couple of things down here that are relatively interesting. So we can see the base UNC. We can see that it was an SMB file share that was found. We can see the file directories and what have you, and the user. The same information basically that's in the CSV spreadsheet. What we've also done is we've also got it to create indices like on a daily basis. So then you can run this over a period of time. So you might want to run it every quarter. You could run it every quarter and see whether there's any new directories that have been created over a period of time. You can carve the data up however you see fit. But for our instance, what we've done is we've built you a nice simple little dashboard, which basically just tells you how many unique UNCs were identified, where these file shares were, all the different file types and what have you. And then as a red teamer, what we could do is we could say, right, well, we're interested in having a look at these VBS files. And we can go straight down here and we can see where those VBS files are. So then as a pen tester, you could go and have a read through them, see what they're doing, see if there's any passwords in there, if there's any sensitive information that'll help you enumerate other parts of the network. However, might also want to say, let's have a look at, so you can also drill into these individual network shares themselves. So we can see that there's a company's network share there. There's also a Terraform one here. So I don't know, maybe somebody's made a mistake and left something in the Minecraft Terraform script that they've got written there. Yeah, so basically it's just a nice, easy way of being able to show what's going on across the network and whether the user can read, write, or delete. So one of the questions might be, as a blue teamer, is why has a standard user got read, write, and delete permissions to Terraform directory? So that's SMBeagle in a nutshell. I'm just going to skip over those because we've already covered those. So what are the things that we're currently doing at the moment? So we've got a large list of things that are currently up on our GitHub. One of those things that we want to try and enhance is the ability for red teamers to be able to identify certain file types, so then they can scan through those text files and use a regex, so they can pull out things like passwords automatically rather than having to go and read them themselves. Maybe we might put that into a separate thread. Another thing we've also been asked is to extract the full NTFS permissions. So then we might be able to link it in somehow to like Bloodhound. So you might identify that there's a certain group. And if you're a member of that group, well, what file shares do you get access to using that group? We also have been asked to import things like the local DNS cache as well as the netstat stuff, because you may well have connected to a DNS service that you might not be connected to anymore, and that will give us a wider range of things. But again, it's really down to the community to figure out what you guys want us to be able to develop for you. Yeah, so it's still to be continued, and I'm really sorry, but I seem to have shortchanged everybody. I've been a little nervous this morning because it's the first time I've spoken in about 6 months, and I've rattled through that a little bit quicker. But I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has. Yep. No, it will work with anonymous users as well. So you don't need to provide any credentials, and then you can identify any open file shares that are open to everyone. So the question was, does it work with without any credentials? Yes, it would. It would absolutely work without any credentials. Yep. Not currently, but that is a very good point. That is something that I will get added on to. So the question was, will it work if you were to provide SMB with a file hash, NTLM hash? Yeah, NTLM hash rather than an actual username and password. Hadn't thought of that, but yes, it most certainly should be able to work like that. So we can get that added onto the backlog. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you've already found a hash, then yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that we'd like to get, so then we can make it a better tool. We are also trying to get it into Kali as well at the moment. We're just stuck getting it into the Kali repo. Just so if anybody knows how to speed that process up, that'd be really good. Any other questions? Just possibly, because we are on the Windows system, we are using the Windows native SMB libraries, APIs. So yes, we probably could identify that quite easily. It's not something that we currently got on, but yeah, it's another great one that we can get added onto the backlog. So I've got 2 ideas already. That's great. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good one. So currently, no, we haven't. But I ran this with Windows Endpoint Defender, the full blown one that linked in with Office 365, so using the advanced Microsoft APT system. And it was really interesting to find that SMBeagle was detected as doing a port scan, but nothing else. That was the only thing that it detected. But yeah, it is a good point. In fact, does it actually do any rate limiting? I think it might do. Give me a second. No, it doesn't currently, but yes, we can get that added in if you wanted to. So we could say only scan so many files per minute or something like that. Yeah, we could get that added on. Any other questions? We have got some other open source tools as well that we've been writing at Punk Security. So we've got SMBeagle, which is our flagship one at the moment. But we've also written one. I'll put that slide up. But we've also written a secret detection tool as well. So it's called Secret Magpie. It links Trufflehog and GitLeaks together, so you can scan your entire company's Git repos for any secrets, because which developer puts an API key into hard codes an API or a password in their source code. I'm sure nobody's ever seen that before. We've also got another tool called PwnSpoof, and that is for threat hunter training. So it'll generate your unique set of web logs every time you run it with a hidden attack inside there. So you can go and try and hunt it down. And we've got a last one, which is a SonarQube to Jira integration tool, because SonarQube don't natively integrate with any other third-party ticketing system. So we've written a Python script which can be put into a Lambda or run natively, which will find any SonarQube findings and go and create your Jira tickets on the back end of it. So we've got a couple of extra tools as well. So find us on LinkedIn or whatever, and come and have a chat with us. If you no other questions? Oh, yeah, certainly. Not currently, but that is another good feature that we could potentially get added in. I think that would be quite an easy one. So you could say, yeah, exactly. I think you'd have to be very careful with that. But yeah, it is a feature that we could get added in. So I've got 4 features out at the back end of today anyway, if nothing else. So my next couple of months are going to be busy. Any other questions? Do you think it's a useful tool? Does anybody think they'll actually use it and go and download it and play with it? Because the more that you play with it, the better it'll become. Because we couldn't find anything else on the market that would allow you to go and scan your network and pull back user information as a low privileged user. Even as an admin, we didn't find a tool. All right. Well, thank you very much. Sorry I've changed you.